I think you should ask an LLM to come up with a testing strategy for this setup.
That's so simple, even I could do it.
What's the mission of the testing, Ian?
So that we don't have to record the same thing twice.
Well, that's a risk.
Always a risk. Always a risk.
Well, a risk that we've turned to reality before as well.
We have.
Yeah.
In our early episodes, we quite often, well, more than once, recorded things twice, didn't we?
Absolutely. But they got better with the retelling. Probably.
Yeah. We had more rehearsed opinions in those days. Blimey.
Blimey, indeed.
I wrote some things.
Interval things.
But I just want to do the quickest one first because I find it hilarious.
Okay, go.
So Hewlett-Packard.
It's just already hilarious.
It's sad. A once great company. They actually changed their customer service system so that if you rang them about your printer, you would have to wait 15 minutes minimum.
Okay.
So even if all the operators were free, you still had to wait 15 minutes.
Okay.
To put you off ringing them.
Oh, I see.
And you just think, that's just terrible. And then this was an article in the Register, and then right next to it was another article about HP changing their mind about doing this. Because when somebody said it out loud or wrote it out loud in an article,
then it
didn't
seem like a great idea.
No, seemed a bit, some might say, mean-spirited.
Yeah. You do wonder about the groupthink that got them there.
Yes,
you
do.
Or the total inability to challenge someone's ridiculous opinion about how things should work.
Don't know what you mean. Yeah, that.
Yeah, it's probably that, isn't it? But yeah, that's pretty good.
I did find that amusing.
I don't know. In my first job out of university, I did a bit of service desk stuff, and I would have liked that 15-minute relaxation time.
And I don't get the impression that they will have done it to make the lives of their customer service representatives happy.
No, that's true.
I feel as though it probably wasn't for that.
Yeah.
Maybe something to do with costs. I'm just going to put it out there. After listening to 15 minutes of, I think the messages were something like, oh, it would be much quicker if you just went on our website to find this support.
Use our new chatbot.
It will be much quicker if you went on our website. Do you not feel like you're wasting your life away on hold when you could be on our website finding the answer to your question? Or
maybe it was just like a reliable 15 minutes of relaxation time on the phone for the customer.
It's like the opposite of mindfulness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mindlessness.
Yeah. Although calling the HP helpline for a printing issue would probably be the very last thing that I would do.
That is beyond the last thing I would do.
Yeah,
in fact, absolutely. I forestall it by never having HP printers.
Yeah.
My way of buying printers is actually quite interesting, well, to me anyway.
Yeah.
In that I feel as though you have to look at what is the cost per sheet. And it turns out the cheapest way to buy a printed sheet of paper is to get an enormous workgroup printer that comes with, so if you look long enough, you'll find one that comes with 12,000 sheets or something in the existing toner.
Yeah.
And then you go and you use it for a bit, and then the really awful thing happens. It runs out of toner, and you discover it will cost more than you paid for the printer by a factor of double or 3 times to buy the toner to put in it.
Right.
And then you buy another printer.
Yeah.
Not very green.
No. I don't believe that they were originally manufactured as disposable single-use objects.
But they've made them economically, that's the only way to go, really.
Yeah.
Or at least if you're a human. I guess if you're a megacorp, you can probably just pay for the toner.
Yeah. Megacorp.
But to me, 800 quid is a lot of money for toner.
Definitely.
Even for untold numbers of thousands of sheets. I'd rather just print with no red.
Yeah.
Well, okay. With no cyan, yellow or magenta. I think you need the black. That's what you need.
Yeah. I specifically got a very basic printer, which you couldn't do anything special with. So it was only for... The only reason I really use it is to print out things to sign for the business. They're real things that you need to sign, like accounts, not just things to sign.
No. Yeah. Signing is good fun, of course, but be ecologically friendly about it.
Made up certificates and things like that.
Yeah.
Here you go. That's for you.
Actually, the
What a lot of things award for you.
Apple Pages has got some really good pretend certificates templates, nice. So that you can just knock, all that curly Q kind of design to make it unforgeable.
Yeah.
Where you can just print like 10,000 copies of it on the. But yeah, it looks pretty good.
All right. Okay.
If you want an amusing certificate.
So HP the worst offenders then?
The idea that you would deliberately force people to waste 15 minutes of their 15 minutes of their life just gratuitously to penalise them for trying to get their thing that you sold them to work. It's just, it's not surprising that they U-turned on it, because when you say it out loud, it just it sounds terrible. What meeting? What did that? I can't even. What was the meeting like where they decided to do it? Were they all just? Well, yes. Shall we set it at 3 hours? Oh no, that's too long. Oh, what about 4 minutes? Oh no, they expect that. It has to be long enough to hurt.
But not so long as to be utterly ridiculous. Although 15 minutes is pretty ridiculous.
Their judgment of what is utterly ridiculous is in question, I would say.
So I imagine the meeting was very senior person suggests the thing, the 15-minute thing, and then everyone else goes very quiet.
Yeah.
And then it gets implemented.
But the meeting would have been called something like Strategies for Moving Support Requests to the Web.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And there will have been one.
Yeah.
Punish them for doing not make the web really good.
Well, yeah.
But punish them for going on the phone.
Yeah. And then still have your web support as a maze of ancient PDF files for
all alike.
Yeah. With a baffling array of printer names which all look incredibly similar.
Baffling array of printer names.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's probably what the strategy was.
Been there before.
Yeah. So we're doing something different, aren't we?
Today.
We're surrounded by gadgets. Additional
to be
gadgets.
Fair, for Ian's office, there is often gadgets, but there is a wider array now. Another baffling array.
You see, when Ash let the side down by moving to Android,
and
thus removing himself forever from, well, not forever, possibly, he could change back, but removing himself from the pool of people with available iPhones to do recording using iPad Final Cut Pro multicam with multiple iPhones. I have stepped into the breach with a spare iPhone.
Yeah, and to be fair, I only had an iPhone 7, so it probably, I don't know if this even would have worked. Or
I'm just going to say, I can't get my fingers in my ears because there's literally enormous headphones in the way. And those of you that actually see the fruits of this exercise might actually be able to appreciate that visual joke. Because for about half of the last episode, I was pointing at this and saying, oh, well, that's something, and then pointing at something else. And I felt as though it was kind of amusing, but also a bit difficult to follow for listeners.
What will we do without the that's not a great thing to do on a podcast type jokes about pointing at things?
Well, there's an extremely high probability that this experiment will prove that we are going to remain an audio-only podcast. But for just this episode, we are recording ourselves using Final Cut Pro multicam. And Ash looks quite sensible, and he's got nice whiteboard and post-it notes in his background.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got a door and a chair. So it's. I like to think I control the environment of this podcast with a rod of iron, with my special buttons.
But you haven't controlled the physical environment.
But I haven't successfully controlled the physical environment.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
I'll just keep, what we'll do is the video can entirely be Ash and the audio can entirely be me.
Oh, yeah, I'd like that. the chaotic part of me likes that.
Yes, there's something to that, isn't there?
Yeah.
However,
we're here. What are we here for? Things.
When do we want them? Now.
Soon.
What do we want? Things. Yes. Oh dear. Yes, I suppose we are here for things.
Yep.
And
it's me to go first. Because last time you told me that testing was dead, and that was first.
It was first.
Yeah.
I think we had a little bump in listenership through our evil use of clickbait for that.
Your evil use of clickbait.
Ash would like to disassociate himself from any suggestion that testing has ever been, may or not, or may be dead.
That's correct.
And you see, I did say may not in there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so you have just by saying that's correct, you've disassociated yourself also from the notion that testing is alive.
Testing is Schrodinger-like.
Yes.
Depending on who's looking.
It's in a quantum intermediate state.
Yeah.
Its qubits are being rotated through a quantum gate.
I still don't understand.
Well, in the end, I think we all collapse. Or something like that.
Or something like that, yeah.
All right, I have to concede.
Concede to the beginning of things.
The going first.
Okay.
And the beginning of things. So, Ash, what is your thing?
What is my thing?
What? Oh, stop it.
Not done that for a while, so I think, you know.
Is it allowed occasionally?
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant. Then.
It's just when it becomes a solid fixture of the podcast, and then we get a review of the podcast done, and
somebody notices.
Somebody says, "Why do you keep doing the same jokes?"
We're never going to have another review done, are we?
No, that's true.
So we've done that. That chapter has
chapter is gone. Well, it's not gone. It's still with us.
It is still with us.
Yeah.
As we address our one listener and other things, and we've got a better cover art as well, haven't we?
Yeah, so, that's true.
Know.
So, what is my thing?
What is your thing?
So, my thing is called user story splitting, or just the chopping up of work in general on a development team.
Dismemberment
of work in general on a development team. So, the thing is, so if there is ever a skill that teams need but rarely have in the either to the refined state or the or at all that is required in order to do this well, it's splitting down work into deliverable and valuable tasks.
So effectively, when you're given something gigantic.
Yeah. Which, you know, even in our agile world, we still get given big I was going to say big
Post-it notes.
Big briefs.
Big briefs. It's big bloomers.
We still get given big chunks of work to do, don't we? Because it's often articulated in that way.
So is there a difference between taking a piece of work and breaking it down in the sense of deciding how to approach it? And a sort of, is there a more grand thing of breaking it into two similar pieces of work that then, you know, for example, you may say, well, actually, I'm going to go back to the business who've given me this enormous thing.
Yeah.
This enormous piece of work, because thing is a reserved word in this podcast. If they've given you an enormous piece of work, you might say, well, can we think of it as these two pieces of work?
Yeah.
But equally, you might have a piece of work that's maybe not too enormous. So you might say, now I want to break it down to find out what the tasks are.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about splitting it down into tasks or splitting it into two. I'm trying not to say project.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, there's kind of like a few things, isn't there? So it's like you've got like the behavior when the piece of work is first sort of introduced to the team and the size of it, and thinking about like how it might be split, or, you know, having the wherewithal to say, actually, that's really big. So can we think about this differently and split it down a little? And then you've got like, I guess it's probably like, there's like a couple of orders of this. There's that part when you first introduced to whatever the big piece of work is, how do you react there? And then there's also, once you've taken it into the team and you understand it a bit better, how do you then split it up in order to begin to work on it? Because I think often I've seen like the first reaction is just to start working on it, which has some value, but the splitting behavior doesn't seem to come naturally. It's not like the first thought, to say, well, how do we break this down once you've got like some understanding of it? So if I describe this in like how it's manifested itself in my career. So basically, a big requirement comes into the team, and then everyone is just like, oh dear, this is going to take like years or whatever it is. So, but no one's willing to say it. So they just say, okay, and then just go off and be nervous for a while.
So it's size, isn't it? It is size.
Yeah.
The motivation for splitting it is the size of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And also sometimes to understand it. But sometimes with smaller sizes, you get more understanding as well, because you get to see how things sort of fit together.
Yeah.
Usually what happens is people start to raise some like initial tasks, and they tend to be quite technical in nature. It's like, oh, well, let's have a database, and let's have a this, and let's have a that.
Let's do the things we know we're going to need to do, whatever happens.
Yeah. But I'm always like, it's probably a bit too early for that as well. And then everyone, like everywhere, kind of all at once tries to work on it and tries to do something with this giant thing and like nibble around the edges of it. And then I say, can we stop and think about how to break this down? And then no one stops because they're already like scared by the size of the thing that they're trying to work on.
With a small t.
Yeah, with a small t. And then once I get to a certain point when I can't resist anymore, after leaving the team to see what they do, after a little bit of time, I would say, right, okay, let's get together and think about how we can split this work and where like the seams are of this work. But that has been repeated like through my career, like ad infinitum.
Ad nauseum.
So to me, it seems like it comes quite naturally. I quite enjoy picking up a larger piece of work and thinking about how it could be broken down. But it doesn't seem that way on, for other people that I work with on development teams. So I was just wondering, like, I think it's a really hard thing to do, isn't it?
I think it is. I mean, I had a hot take on this.
Okay.
Which was, is it because it's hard to split it if you don't have both the knowledge that the business has about the context and the knowledge from the technology side about what's easy and hard in that environment? And it's hard to do because it's hard to find people in both of those domains.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of going somewhere with that. When I thought about it some more, I was kind of thinking about, actually, I kind of get why it's you.
Yeah.
Because it's testers are the people with the feet in both domains.
Well, yes.
And actually, serious question, this is to make up for saying implying testing might be dead last time. Maybe this is something that actually testers are well suited to lead on doing.
Yeah.
Because it's actually, they're the ones perhaps with the most feet in both domains.
Yeah.
Most feet. Okay. They're the ones with a clear foot in each domain.
Yeah. I go through stages with this though, because when these scenarios like come about, I'm like, I don't get paid enough to do that kind of work.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a slight rebellion on my part, to say, well, I have this skill and it's probably something to do with my background as a tester. But I'm like, well, until I can't resist it anymore, I resist it on those grounds that it's like, well, this is kind of higher order work.
But is it something? I mean, that's kind of my question. Doesn't it make sense actually for testers to play a leading role in that? And in fact, wouldn't it be a good idea if you made it part of the process? So for everything that came in, you said, is this too big, too small, or just right?
Well, you see,
is it a Goldilocks task?
See, the thing is there's some like, I agree with you, and then reality kicks in, and no one.
I liked it when you just agreed with me.
So yes, ideally, but in my again, I'm kind of going back to my experience. I then need to say it 9 or 10 times until the message like sinks in and the splitting actually happens.
But that's the making it part of the process half of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're asking for every task. Is it, I'm going to say it again because I didn't think it had got enough of a laugh last time. Is it a Goldilocks task that's just right? Is it too big or too small?
Yeah.
Or is it just right?
What, the size of the task?
The size of the task.
Yeah, well, you want just right, don't you?
Is that belaboured enough, do you think?
Yeah.
Just right. But if the team asked that about every task, then instead of flapping about trying to do enormous tasks,
yeah,
and it was in the process to not do it, and it was led by someone, may well be a tester, who's got a foot in both camps and can talk about how we play this back. I mean, tasks are coming from the product manager, right?
Yeah.
And so they can play back to the blimey. They can play back to the product manager and say, hello, Mr. or Ms. Product Manager.
Yeah.
This task is really big. What if we did it like that?
Yeah.
As these 2 tasks, then immediately you would be able to report progress because one of them would be finished quicker.
Well,
I don't know. You'd have to find a way to sell it to them. Well, one of the interesting things in the articles that you linked about this, which we will obviously put in the show notes for everybody to read. I didn't say that last time. I was going to say the second article because I can't actually remember. One of them was by Mike Cohn.
Yeah.
And he talked about splitting it by considering the path through it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. So, and often he was sort of saying it's a bit of an anti-pattern, always just automatically trying to split it on technology.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. It was a bit of a digression from the main point I was trying to make, but it's how you split it and how you sell it and how you can propose things back to the product manager or the business that make sense.
Yeah. So my brain goes through, it applies a bunch of patterns to something like pretty much as soon as I see it, like the big requirement, I'm like, how could we split this? So would it be by, so you could do it by path through the system. You could do it by sort of saying, right, what's the simplest thing we can build? And then add the more complex items as we go along, or whatever the pattern is. And I kind of go through a bit of a process in my head in order to start to come up with options for splitting work down.
And presumably the path through it is one of those that you consider.
Yeah. And I often arrive at like a list of like capabilities that whatever it is needs to have. And then I play with that list, put it in different orders and group things together. But this is what's going on in my head and, well, in a markdown file in front of me as well.
So if you were going to guide a team through it, it might involve Post-it notes and moving them around.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're doing some mental version of that.
Yeah.
I mean mental in terms of inside your mind rather than crazy.
Yeah. Because it's the kind of puzzle. Both. It's the kind of puzzle that I like. But I think I have a bit of a skill for it, and I recognise when it needs to happen as well. Whereas sometimes it takes a little while for teams to recognise when that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So I think there's something there as well. So maybe I could make it a bit more like explicit.
What you get for being old. I mean experienced, obviously.
Yeah. No, I think it is as well.
I can't call you old without calling myself ancient because I'm probably, 10 years older than you or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. And the other thing that I often see is someone always says, well, should we have an analysis task, a development task, and a testing task for this thing? And I'm like, no, please no. But I think Mike Cohn mentions that in the story splitting mistakes blog as well, where it's like, don't split it along expertise lines. It's more like, don't have a spike for every task, because that just means you've got an analysis task to find out how to do it. Although I've met a couple of people.
Did he say do have a spike for every task?
No, don't have a spike for every task.
I read that backwards, but I didn't read that bit very much. So.
Right, okay. So yeah, it's like, don't have a spike for every task, because otherwise that's just an analysis task, isn't it? The story is not independent of the analysis, which I do find is kind of another habit as well, is to wait for the analysis to be done as part of something separate and then start the story. It's like, I'm supposed to discover this stuff together.
Yeah.
It's kind of the togetherness, which is the point. So I always find that sort of trend really interesting as well. Someone very proudly said to me a little while ago that they always have the lead developer does all the analysis for all the tasks, and then we just go away and implement them.
That sounds like a great way to not think about it very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like, oh, well, we've got all these people's brains, but let's not use any of them.
Let's just have the lead developer.
Maybe they can just watch as I perform my brilliance.
Yeah. And I'll try and keep this brief, but can we just return to Figma?
Are we going to need the music?
Is there music for Figma?
Well, the music is for Ash rants, I've discovered.
All right. Go on then. Is this some relaxing music in order to temper the rant a little bit?
Go on. Shoot.
So, once a set of Figma designs have been presented to the team then has... their brains cannot split them down, because they just see the entirety of the designs. Once again, I'm not blaming Figma the tool. I'm blaming Figma as it's used. So, in terms of breaking things down, Figma and how it has been deployed has destroyed story splitting as a viable technique. Right, I'm done.
I'm fading it out for you. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. I did, of course.
I also think having front-end, back-end and database teams kind of dictates how you're going to split the tasks down as well.
Well, Conway's law does come into this.
Yeah, definitely. It's very hard to imagine everybody working together on something when you've got such...
It's not natural. It goes against the laws of nature.
Well, yeah, exactly. When you've got such heavily delineated teams that have a specific set of skills.
Particularly when one team is asking the other team when the real developers are going to come along.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I do find that is a thing as well. But with a small tip, we've got to stop doing that.
Just going to gradually entice you into this weird,
strange world. Capital T things, small t things.
Yes. Fortunately, it's bounded by this podcast. You can say...
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, you say it in supermarkets and stuff, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's even though you say what a lot of things,
it's just natural.
It's just natural. Yes. One of our favourite things was mentioned in one of your articles that you brought up. You know what I'm talking about? Wrong button. I had it all set up and then I had to change it around.
Tell me what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about is...
That went so smooth.
It would have gone a lot smoother if I hadn't switched the buttons over. Maybe we need a button cam as well. We need a third camera to look down at the buttons so that the full joy of them can be appreciated. There was a guideline in there about if it's chaos, then stop trying to do this task splitting or whatever you're doing, and just put the damn fire out. And then it was something like, when it's complex, don't try and list all the tasks, but just find the relevant ones.
Okay,
and do something. And then when it's complicated, it was find all the tasks and then do the most important one.
Okay. Well, that's pretty solid advice, that, isn't it, I think?
Yes, I thought it was quite a good use of...
We'll have to do Kneffin as a thing again soon, won't we?
If only for to justify the enormous cost of the Rodecaster Pro 2.
Yeah, exactly. Kneffin for the 10th time on What a Lot of Things, everyone.
Kneffin!
I think that's an excellent time for me to say that was my thing.
I enjoyed that thing a lot. I think I even said all the things I wrote down to say about it.
Sorry, it's just reading that.
I know. Well, I don't know what possessed me. I decided to write something out, but I'm just pointing to the camera. You can see that's me writing the thing down. Actually, I was trying to hold the thing up so the little image of me on my iPad could read it rather than the camera from which the little image. So I was going, oh, it's not quite working. Oh, dear Lord.
So yeah, let's end that one on Cynefin.
Yes.
Which, is the end of all conversations, as we know.
I'm resisting the temptation.
Yeah.
To press that button again.
Yeah.
Because I'd only get it wrong.
So let's have an interlude.
We could argue that clanger is kind of saying interlude.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Very chirpy interlude.
On the button it says whatever.
Well.
But, interlude. I think that's better, isn't it?
Have you got any interlude things?
Oh, there were some interlude things,
yep.
And I had them open on my laptop, but now I've forgotten them all again.
Firstly, we're on Blue Sky.
We are on Blue Sky. Big news.
Big news. And
Ash has joined Blue Sky?
No, I haven't actually. Still haven't. I can't.
It's Mastodon first.
Yeah. Just I'm a bit over social media, to be honest. Apart from, LinkedIn. I don't know what LinkedIn is, but it's something else.
It's hard to argue that one should not be over social media.
Yeah.
And I find Blue Sky a bit ambiguous because it's still owned by a billionaire, so it can still be subject to enshittification.
Subject to right-wing enshittification at any time.
And Mastodon is therefore wholly better for being decentralized and much more niche user controlled. Mm-hmm. But we are on Blue Sky because Transistor provides a Blue Sky integration.
Oh, right, cool.
So when our most recent episode came out, it was posted on Blue Sky.
Lovely.
And as I'm the only person that follows our Blue Sky account, I had to retweet it, re-Blue Sky it.
Re-Blue Sky it.
Repost it.
Oh, right, okay.
Some term that doesn't involve tweet.
Yep.
So I did. So we have now auto-posting on Blue Sky. But one thing that's nice about the way they've done it is that if you reply to the post on Blue Sky, it appears on the episode's page on our website as a reply. So you can actually talk about the episode underneath the actual episode on its very own page on whatalotofthings.com.
Nice.
That's our website, whatalotofthings.com. So, yes, we're on Blue Sky.
But when will we be billionaires?
Well, we've just got to get our circulation up a little bit.
Okay. We can do that.
More listeners. What's it even more? We have to come up with... We'll ask an AI to do it just to make it worse, but we'll say, here are the titles of this week's things. Please come up with the most clickbaity episode title that you can. And then it will say, they talked about these two things. You won't believe number 2 or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's quite a common pattern, isn't it?
It is. Although, because we've only got 2 things, it's not very... It's a bit less compelling than it is when you've got a list of 10 things.
Yeah. So what else have we got on the list? Claude Code.
Oh, Claude Code. Yes, we did this episode, and my thing in the last episode, as I know you all very well remember.
You, the listener.
Will very well remember. And I talked about how I was quite pleased with slurping up a repository and piping it into a command and finding out things about it and using it to write test strategies to save me having to talk to any actual testers.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. They just tell you your strategy's rubbish.
They go on and on.
You need to split your stories down.
Exactly.
What's the mission of the testing? How are you going to decide what level of testing you're going to do? What's the risk? Where's the value?
I need the music again.
And on and on.
Want me to do the music again?
No.
You could just repeat that with the music. That would be better. Yeah, so I was quite happy with that. And then basically, yesterday... time machine. The day before... No!
The day before yesterday.
The day after...
On a day?
The day after the episode Oh my God. The day before.
Recently.
You're not helping. The day before the episode came out, Claude Code was released by Anthropic, along with Claude 3.7, which is their newest model. And everybody on various sites like Reddit and so on are all raving about how Claude 3.7 is the best coding LLM. It's amazing.
Is it going to revolutionize how we use LLMs?
Testing will be dead.
Yeah. I enjoyed so I watched the video, which was the release, and it was two very fresh-faced. There was a developer and a product manager.
Yes.
And I enjoyed that. Basically, they did a load of stuff, like adding buttons to things, and which was, apparently the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. And then at the end, they were like, can you add some tests or something? And Claude was like, yeah, sure. And then it just iterated over tests until they all passed. And then the two very fresh-faced people were like, brilliant, everything's amazing. I was like, yeah.
It did fail to ask about the risk associated with the testing. But it continued its unblemished record for paying very little attention to what the LLM is actually testing. So, Nonetheless, they at least added tests and they thought about them.
They did. They thought about
briefly,
them at the highest level possible for a very brief moment.
They thought, some people watching this will be interested in adding tests. We better do that. So I thought, well, I need to have a go at Claude Code.
Okay.
So I've been wanting, so maybe I should put the music on for me for this. We've been working on the Ilkley Live website, and it's converted to TypeScript now. And we've had to take some decisions about, for example, so the biggest challenges about doing that was that it uses Notion as a database to store the performances. I think I talked about this on the episode for which our scars are still healing, where we talked about I'm like winding up to begin again.
I know you are. You said this was hard to do, and I was like, it's because there weren't any tests. It's because there weren't any tests.
It's not because there weren't any tests. Although it didn't help. What was hard to do about it was that basically Notion has very, very complicated type system, which is probably all right reflected in TypeScript, but it's not. It's a bit of a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things was, do I make this whole Notion thing type safe, or do I just say to myself, I'm replacing it with a database? Let's just make its interface type safe.
Yeah.
And so, the stuff comes back from Notion, we put it into an object, and then we Zod the object.
Right, okay. Yeah.
We parse the object with Zod. Because zodding the object just seems like something you shouldn't do. That's how we make sure it's safe and it's got a proper typing. So we just do it through that. And so one thing I've been wanting to do is say, okay, well, I need to replace Notion with a database.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to have an admin function in the app, in the Ilkley Live website, so that administrators can, in fact, manage the things in the way Notion used to let them manage them. And so I went to Claude Code and I thought, well, this is going to be a pain to do. So let's see how Claude Code does at it.
I actually think that's a really good use of an LLM for coding.
It was great, actually.
As in the actual...
It's within its competencies.
Yes, exactly. It's a really good example. Whereas building some kind of complex interface to communicate complex information.
That you yourself don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. It would be a really bad use of an LLM. Whereas an administrative tool like that sounds like a really good way to use it.
Well, the thing was, it saved me a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it did a reasonable, decent job of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, as usual, you argue with it, don't you?
Yeah.
And it says, I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to do that. And you've got three choices. You've got, yes, you can do that. Yes, and you don't need to ask me to do that in the future. And no, I'm going to explain to you why not. And so I did use the no I'm going to explain to you why not button a number of times.
Right.
It's not really a button. Because the other thing is it runs in a terminal, which is quite surprising for something like that.
Mm.
And it was very good.
Yeah.
It did a good job of it. And I think if I need to make changes, even quite sweeping changes, but maybe not all that challenging to this code, it's really going to make it a lot easier. And so, yes, it even wrote a script to copy all the entries out of Notion and put them into Postgres.
Yeah.
Which I just thought was a nice optional extra.
Well, so things like simple administrative functions, non-complex data migrations sound like good things to use an LLM.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
as a coding assistant.
All automation, you want to use it for the boring stuff.
Yeah.
So that you can do the interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, although I still remember that quote from that, I can't remember who said it, but she said something, we've linked to it before. She said something like, I wanted artificial intelligence to do the cleaning and the washing up.
Yeah.
So I can do creative things.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel like sometimes, the general aim is for us to do the washing up and an AI to create the art.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this did make me quite happy. I was quite delighted with how that was able to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I think it's a good use of it.
So yes, but it was just a bit annoying that the day after our episode about AI and programming came out, it all changed. But that's the nature of AI stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I have one final
interval thing.
So there's a website called podstatus.com.
Podstatus.
And on the other day, recently, we received an email to Ian and Ash at whatalotofthings.com.
That's our email address.
It is our email address. And very nicely inquired, hello, how's it going? Yeah, pretty good, thank you. But Carlos at podstatus.com had some cool information that he thought might interest us.
It did.
It did. Right. It did. Very interesting indeed. So in the category of technology on Apple podcast rankings in the Côte d'Ivoire.
You see, Ash, you're saying it wrong. You've got to start off with the category of podcast rankings. We were number something. And then only then say.
So in the Côte d'Ivoire.
That's made it even more first.
We are in the top 10 of technology podcasts. And then in Cameroon, we are in the top 100 of technology podcasts, 78th.
But in our home country of Britain...
Well, yes, we're not on the list.
We're not on the
list. So I just want to say thank you to all our listeners. I want to say thank you to Podstatus and thank you to all our listeners, especially our listeners in Cameroon and Côte d'Ivoire.
Yes. We will include links so you can verify these statements.
Yeah. And that was my favourite interlude thing.
That's very good.
Favourite self-aggrandizing interlude thing. So shall we move on to things with a capital T?
Well, only one thing with a capital T.
Thing. What's a lot of thing?
Yes.
Given we've only got one thing left. So Ian, tell me what your thing is.
So I enjoy titling my things.
Put a lot of effort into the title.
Yeah. So the title for this was Apple is gravely disappointed.
Oh.
And actually...
Did they do a big sigh?
That's a bit of an exaggeration because what they said was they're deeply disappointed.
All right.
I don't know if gravely disappointed is more or less disappointed than deeply disappointed.
I don't know, actually. I would say gravely's more disappointed. Gravely's quite the word. It's weighty.
Yeah, it feels... I think so. Yeah. But Apple is only deeply disappointed.
Right. So they could be more disappointed.
Not all that disappointed, really.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yes, so that was my thing.
Monumental thing.
Monumental, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One for the valley.
One for the valley. Are you going to oblige me by asking me what the source of their deep disappointment might be?
Yes. Why is Apple gravely, deeply disappointed?
Because their customers in the UK will no longer have the option to enable advanced data protection.
Oh.
And they say, especially given the continuing rise of data breaches and other threats to customer privacy.
Right.
And Apple remains committed to offering their users the highest level of security for their personal data. And they are hopeful that they will be able to do so in the future in the United Kingdom.
So what is advanced data protection?
Well, therein lies a story.
Gather round, everyone.
Once upon a time, there were 3 bears.
Stay a while.
So, once upon a time...
Oh, there is a story. Oh,
there is a story. Once upon a time, everyone was very happy that you had end-to-end encryption in your Apple messages, which you might call iMessages, but I think they're probably not called that anymore.
Okay.
When you send a message to someone using Apple Messages,
Yep.
it would arrive with them, and at no point during the transit was Apple or anybody else able to read it because the encryption was end-to-end.
Yeah.
So end-to-end means that if you're in the middle of an end-to-end encryption transaction or messaging or whatever, you can't read the messages.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And end-to-end encryption is really a key technology for having any privacy in this age that we live in, where the internet is how we have to do almost everything.
Yeah. But government's less keen on end-to-end encryption as I.
They are less keen on it. And in the case of Apple's end-to-end encryption, there was a hilarious backdoor, which probably wasn't hilarious if the authorities are kicking in your front door and arresting you. And the way that the authorities could gain access to your Apple messages was that your backups on iCloud were not encrypted.
Mm-hmm.
So while your messages were end-to-end encrypted, if you made a backup on iCloud of your phone, the decrypted messages on your phone would be included in the backup.
Right.
And Apple had the ability to have access to the backup. And so the authorities would demand Apple give them information from people's phone backups.
Mm-hmm. So that wasn't just like a fun oversight, that they forgot to re-encrypt when taking the backup. That was a genuine product decision.
Well, at some point it was, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, ever since they made that decision at the dawn of iCloud, they've been trying to find ways of fixing it, because I think as a company, and I know some people like to be sarcastic and cynical about this, but they have made privacy of their users a selling point, and they do actually care about it.
Okay.
So what they eventually did was that they made this ADP, Advanced Data Protection.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest impact of turning it on was that if you lost your access to your iCloud account, you were scuppered. Right. Apple couldn't get it back for you.
Yeah.
And in order to turn it on, all the devices on your iCloud account had to be up to a certain level of iOS and macOS and everything. Yeah. So if you had an old device that was on your iCloud account, you wouldn't be able to turn it on. And when you turned it on, it was full of dire warnings about you can lose access to your account.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I think that's probably why I suspect not all that many people turned it on.
Yeah, because it was a bit scary when you go to do it.
But journalists, for example, whose whistleblowers they don't want people to be able to find out about who they are, those kinds of people for whom it's very important to have good security will have turned it on.
Yeah.
So Apple are normally quite transparent about this sort of thing. And in fact, they did write, as we have said many times before, we have never built a backdoor or master key to any of our products or services, and we never will. But what they haven't been transparent about is the reason why they've taken this measure. Yeah. Because it's only customers in the UK. So if you've got it switched on in the UK, they actually can't turn it off.
Yeah.
But you'll have a deadline. You have to turn it off yourself or lose access to your iCloud account.
Okay.
And new users can't turn it on. So they've not explained in any sentence of this article why it was that they've done this to users in the UK.
Okay.
And the reason for that, I think, lies in an article from the Washington Post, in which it was reported that the UK government has provided a technical capability notice to Apple, demanding that Apple lets them have access to these things that are encrypted by ADP.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think the scope of the notice, as reported in the Washington Post, was it would enable them to have access to the global Apple information.
Right. So it wouldn't be particularly possible to separate the two.
No.
Yeah.
So Apple's response to this has been to just enable it for UK users. So effectively what that means is the UK government have simply made our security worse for just UK users.
That's interesting, isn't it?
There's a few things sort of surrounding this. So one of them is, and I was sort of thinking, well, it's going to be like they'll need a warrant for any particular data access.
Sure.
But actually, Matthew Green, who's an industry expert about this, has written a sort of explanation of it. He quoted the Washington Post, I think, to say, the British government's undisclosed order issued last month requires blanket capability to view fully encrypted material, not merely assistance in cracking a specific account. And this has no known precedent in major democracies. So it's basically us and China. Because I originally thought, it will be, a warrant access, but it's not. It's unfettered access to everything.
Right, okay.
It allows them to do things like speculative trawling to find wrongdoing.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
They'll just run, code that goes to everybody's phones and catches you out doing something.
Yeah.
Talking about something.
Yeah, so even if you've not been accused of anything.
Exactly so, yes.
Yeah. So did Apple sort of fight this then?
I think they still are.
Right, okay.
But because one of the premises of the technical capability notice is that Apple are forbidden to talk about it. They're not allowed to.
Right, okay.
They're not allowed to tell the people they're doing it to.
Yeah.
Hence the very peculiar omission in their post there about in the post about saying they're doing this, not why.
Yeah. Yeah, the language was quite sort of specific and studied, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
In order to explicitly not mention lots of things.
You know that lawyers had wrote it, basically.
Yeah. So do you think this opens a bit of a box in terms I didn't know about technical capability notices?
Yes.
So I guess is sorry, I'm asking a few things here. So does that infer that if you don't meet this technical capability notice, then your ability to operate in the UK will be, I don't know, there'll be some consequences for it, basically.
Well, I think Apple complies with the law. Yeah. Its policy is to comply with the law in local jurisdictions. Yeah. So iCloud in China is all hosted on Chinese servers and the government has the key. But these technical capability notices were part of the is a 2016 Act of Parliament that's colloquially described as the Snoopers Charter.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so this was sort of seen as overreaching in 2016 when it was just, we're going to give ourselves the power to do this.
Yeah.
But now they're actually doing it. I mean, who knows how many times they've done it. I mean, Apple, it's kind of come out. It's not clear where from, but it's come out. But, who knows if other companies have already complied with these types of things.
Right, okay.
But it makes me cross because effectively we're now less... I'm an Apple user.
Yeah.
I use iCloud backups. I didn't have ADP turned on. But it basically means that we're now less secure.
Yeah.
Than it's not that security pointing at criminals is one thing and security pointing at everybody else is another thing.
Yeah, you worry for whistleblowers and journalists. So there's a whole sort of raft of groups which have a very compelling reason for end-to-end encryption and encryption at rest as well. So I think there's different orders of impact, isn't there?
There certainly is.
Yeah, so for a lot of people, it will just be who cares? But I see that the whole "I've got nothing to hide" question comes up here as well, doesn't it?
It's just the worst, most pointless argument against personal privacy. Back in the 1970s, 1980s or whatever, before the internet really came along, if the government wanted to tap your phone, they could, but they needed to get a warrant. They needed to put in place a technical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so they did it not all that much, but when it really mattered. And now, because they've got this potential of just having this massive dragnet of data where instead of solving crimes the traditional manner, like the 5 find-outers.
Yeah.
My favourite Enid Blyton grouping.
Not the Secret 7.
I was never bothered about them. And the famous 5 are good, but, I still find myself a fan of the 5 find-outers.
5 found-outers. It's a good name as well, isn't it?
Well, it's clear. It's on the tin. It says on the tin what they do. But, that it used to be that you would tackle... If you wanted to solve a crime, then you would do detective work.
Yeah.
And this sort of thing of... And then at the other end of the scale, you've got like Minority Report, the film Minority Report, where they had people who had special precognition people who could look in the future, and then you could be arrested for a crime you were only going to commit.
Yeah.
You hadn't done it yet.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in the middle, we look through everyone's data all the time to detect crimes.
Yeah, yeah. Because there's like, when I kind of read this, like I was thinking about, well, is there any other examples where you kind of have that level of surveillance, which is then like abused quite badly? So you've got obviously like undercover police officers going into certain sort of left-wing groups, if you like, in the 80s, 90s, and probably beyond as well, who just going in to surveil and then end up doing some fairly dark things while they're there as well, under sort of false pretenses.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, if you give that level of power, then it starts to be used in ways that you didn't intend.
Well, you've got to just think back to the Edward Snowden revelations back when that happened. They still haven't let him off that. They're very vindictive. He still has to live in Moscow.
I don't think they ever will.
And they pardoned Trump pardoned some very dodgy characters.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't think they ever will either.
No, that's it for life for Edward Snowden, I think.
But the revelations that he uncovered included, people looking up their neighbours' stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the building of these systems and all ways to look into data. It's like Uber's famous God mode, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Which was always like a good example of extremely nefarious consequences and actions being taken with access to wide-ranging data about people and their location and what they're up to. And I think it's just like, those types of tools, I struggle to think of justifications for them.
Yeah.
Because like it's untargeted. It's not like someone is suspected of doing something. It's just like you're just opening the door to a world of data just in case you might need it. But once you've opened it, then I think there's always the chance that someone will then abuse that power. And I think history has shown that will probably happen.
Yeah, undoubtedly. I'm just reading from Matthew Green's article, which I would say there's a lot of interesting stuff around about this, but I would go to that as probably number one source. He's writing, in the worst case interpretation of the law, which I now find I can remember, is the Investigatory Powers Act.
Yeah.
No, aka the Snoopers Charter. The most worst case interpretation of the law, the UK might now be the arbiter of all cybersecurity defence measures globally. His Majesty's government, he's written Her Majesty's government,
right? Well,
which is a bit out of date, could effectively cap the amount of digital security that customers anywhere in the world can depend on without users even knowing the cap is in place. This could expose vast amounts of data to state-sponsored attackers, such as the one who recently compromised the entire US telecom industry.
Yeah.
We know about that.
Yeah.
Remember the whole thing about Huawei 5G hardware. Anyway, it's it's kind of upsetting to me that they'll do this.
Yeah. I think it's like a reflection of like not mood, but like situation, you know, kind of extra paranoia and, you know, more powers to places where they shouldn't be going to over, you know, an individual's life. Because, you know, as part of privacy, we accept that there will be people who are doing bad things and using encrypted means of facilitating those things. But then that's part of privacy's got two sides to it, doesn't it? You know, it's like everyone's entitled to it. Some people will use it for nefarious means. The vast majority of us, you know, just want our data to be left alone.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's always the way. So basically, in order to counter the very few people who will be using it for nefarious means, you implement something that's so fantastically wide-ranging.
And disproportionate.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the literal nuclear warhead for the nail, isn't it?
Yes. We could go back to Benjamin Franklin. He who would sacrifice a little bit of freedom for a little bit of safety doesn't deserve either the freedom or the safety.
Yeah, that's it, I think.
That's there or thereabouts, I think. Took a while, didn't it? But we got there.
He also said, love your enemies, for they tell you your faults.
I don't need enemies for that. Well, okay, but in the particular domain of faults regarding testing.
I found a fault.
Yes. Yes. So I'm not sure that was more of a rant than a thing.
Well, I guess I hope it's not part of a slope or a further slope into less privacy for the individual.
It feels like it might be, because what government wouldn't be tempted by that?
Yeah.
Now that Apple has done it for the United Kingdom, why not America or New Zealand or Australia?
Yeah. Then imagine if you trained some kind of artificial intelligence on that data to pick out things that you might be interested in.
Well, I'm sure that definitely isn't happening.
No.
There's no way
there's no way that they would use that technology to do that.
Maybe they could just dispatch policemen to your house to arrest you.
Just
I'm sure there'll be
automated dispatch of policemen. Hello.
One of the
hello. What am I being arrested for, officer? I don't know.
Yes.
The LLM told me to come and pick you up.
Computer said nicked.
Computer said, feel that chap's collar. Job done.
Yes. Dear.
We'll sort out what he's being accused of later. Just bring him in.
Yes. That'll be us.
Yeah. A profound thing.
A profound thing. That's more deep. The monuments tend to go upwards, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Profound is deep.
I was trying to think of something that goes with gravely as well, but
yes. So I'm also disappointed. Apple is disappointed.
I was going to say, in general.
I'm just linking back to the title just so that I don't even know why. It just feels like that you should
Apple's
finish where you began.
Disappointed. You're gravely disappointed.
Yes. I'm not angry.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm mildly disappointed.
I'm a bit angry.
I haven't reached apoplectic fury.
Well, nobody's tried to set a deadline on you, have they?
No, that's true, actually. That's true, actually. No one's done that for a little while.
Have they been listening to this podcast?
I don't know. I try and be consistent with my messages around deadlines and estimates, in that I don't believe in them. Do you want me to say that? Right, okay. So the only...
just looking.
Look alert and look interested.
Look interested.
So the only reason that I will go to an estimation session is to ensure that no one asks for a test estimate. If they do, I will remind them that it is the team's estimate. There is no test estimate. And testing can only ever stop. It can never finish. And I can stop whenever you like. That's it.
Oh dear. You feel better now?
I do. We'll have to put together a greatest hits compilation, won't we? We can just do all my rants.
Well, yeah, and you could put them on a soundboard app, and then you could use them in meetings instead of going to them.
Yeah, it's like, I've said this a million times before. What would Ash say? I can just have some kind of AI assistant, which is me, basically. And whenever it hears the word test estimate in a meeting, it just starts playing that clip.
Well, we could actually we could make an AI. We could make an AI that knew all of the things we've ever said on episodes of What a Lot of Things.
Yeah, true.
And then you could ask it,
what does Ash think about test estimates? Press the button.
Yeah. It will be very quick. Oh dear. Well, anyway, thank you for enjoying that thing. What? We don't say that.
So how do you get in touch, Ian?
Well, I think we've already covered it, haven't we?
Okay,
because Carlos,
indeed, got in touch.
From Pod Status.
Yeah.
Got in touch.
So basically, if you get in touch, you're pretty much guaranteed a mention.
Yes. And then, with that piece of glory, you can
dine out for
months.
For months on that.
Yeah.
Well.
So, are there any closing thoughts? Maybe we ought to do like Jerry. Do you remember Jerry Springer?
Yeah.
So I must admit, I only watched a couple of them ever. And in them, people would go and say stuff to each other, and then some other people would have a fight, and then people in black would come and separate them.
And then there'd be like a paternity or maternity test.
Yes. And then more fighting.
Then more fighting.
And shouting.
Yeah.
But the thing that always happened at the end was that he would provide the audience with his final thoughts. But they never were, because he always did it the next time. I suppose there's a last episode somewhere with his actual final thoughts.
Well, yeah, that's true, actually, yeah. Would have got there eventually.
But he would summarise what he felt his audience ought to have learned from watching the show. Maybe we could come up with a final thought about what we think people should have picked up from the glorious opportunity to listen to us for the last, blimey. At least we're not up to an hour and a half yet.
So I think that's a good time to not add any final thoughts. And say, dear listener.
Dear listener.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. The end.